Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of The Groundwork. Today's special guest is Priya Mulvihill, founder of YouAgain, the superfood baking brand inspired by ancient nutrition and Ayurvedic ingredients. YouAgain offers gluten-free and plant-based cookie mixes using organic, whole food ingredients and superfoods and adaptogens. Prior to that, Priya spent 8.5 years in accounting and finance, and she was also an endurance athlete. Priya also experienced bone deterioration and other conditions, which inspired her to look for holistic remedies to heal herself, thus inspiring her to start the cookie brand that we know today to share it with all of us. Thank you for joining us, Priya.
Thanks so much for having me, Ashley. I'm really excited to chat.
Me too. So just tell me a little bit about your background, before the whole cookie company. Accounting, finance, it's completely different field. So how did you go from that to this?
Yeah, totally. So I was in accounting and finance, like you said, for about 8.5 years. And throughout those years, so I was in public accounting for about 4.5 years. I have my certified public accounting license, but throughout that, and as you mentioned, I was an endurance athlete. So I was really interested and focused on health, wellness, nutrition, even while, obviously having my full-time career. And at the same time, I was very, I would say, focused on that career path, but I knew that I had like a creative element that I wanted to eventually tap into. Right. But again, the brand really just came out of my own necessity to create something for myself, which I'm happy to get into. But yeah, through those years, really just focusing more and more on the field health and wellness. So from being in public accounting, I moved into internal roles for companies like RxBar and Your Super, where I was able to, use my technical skill set, that being in accounting and finance, with brands and companies and missions that I really support, that being natural food and health and wellness. At the same time, really understanding the consumer packaged goods space, which we call CPG, and understanding, everything from supply chain to operations to building a product to R&D. Of course, I was living in my finance bubble, but luckily those companies were still small when I joined, that I was able to really leverage people there to learn more and build those connections with the founders and with people that could teach me. So that's really where it went. And then as I was at my last company, that was also Your Super, so a superfood company, I started to see a lot more demand and use cases for baking. And just based on my journey and how I had kind of discovered adaptogens and Ayurveda and blending them all together with, cookies and desserts, I thought it was a great time to really bring it to the market. People were looking for things to do at home, baking, clean ingredients, focusing on immunity. Gut health is such a big issue right now, and finding alternatives that can support that. And that's, what YouAgain offers. So it was really just kind of a figuring out that we have a white space and taking advantage of that. And so I decided to kind of jump all in and take it to market last year around November.
Yeah, it sounds like obviously a great opportunity. You got to kind of see the behind the scenes before you jumped into it. So it definitely helped you out, when starting your new company. So tell me a little bit about, obviously bone deterioration, the conditions you faced. How long ago was that? And when did you discover, all those things?
Yeah. So throughout that journey, I would say of, competing in, so when I say endurance athlete, I was a runner, distance runner. So just through competing in all those races, I really started to become, how there's a fine line between, being very interested in it and pursuing it and then becoming obsessive with it. Yeah. And so I kind of peeked over into that other side where I was obsessed with exercising and running, but at the same time also just doing every possible exercising that I could, really noticing how it changed my body, not for the good, unfortunately. And I started to really restrict what I was consuming. So I became really obsessed with calories and living in a calorie deficit. And this was probably about 8 years ago or so, 10 to 8 years ago. And so through that, later realized that I was actually had, what they clinically call an eating disorder for a number of those years. And that's really what caused that bone deterioration that you mentioned, hormone disruption. So, obviously when you restrict your nutrient and your nutrient intake, especially for females, obviously for females and males, but for females, our hormone and our reproductive system is so reliant on key nutrients to continue to produce that estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, everything that we need to have a healthy menstrual cycle. And through those, sex hormones also continues to build your bones, support just your skeletal function as well as your muscle and endocrine system. So obviously all of that halted for me, which caused a lot of my early onset osteoporosis, in my 20s, which is really, really young to develop those types of things. And that's really where I had to start learning more about how I can support my body and build back to prevent it from continuing to deteriorate and really just support a healthier body.
Yeah, so I'm sorry you had to go through that, but obviously, everything happens for a reason in a way. Obviously, we don't want that to happen to anybody, and I'm not saying it should have happened to you, but it
Right.
helped inspire you to get to this point and learn more things, build a cookie brand, all that kind of stuff. So
Exactly.
after you found out, obviously you had this condition and all these kind of things, what was your first step? Because obviously you were still learning. So what was your first step to, like, did you initially think, oh, I'm going to go into holistic?
No, that's a great question. So it kind of, it wasn't a very like clear process, I guess. But as I think back to it, so when I realized, like I said, I was in denial for the fact that I even had an eating disorder for a number of years until my family, my husband, everybody was like, this is becoming serious. And then, of course, the fact that I think the biggest catalyst was just not having a menstrual cycle. So I didn't have a period for, at that point, going about 7, 8 years. And for a while, modern, the doctors I was going to, the gynecologists were like, oh, it's normal. It's normal. You are an athlete. Like, that's what happens. And I was like, okay, it's normal. But then as I started to learn more about it, and I think at the same time, I became interested in more of a holistic nutrition myself. So I wasn't really geared towards it. I just started learning more about it. And feeling that that was a good approach for me. So I started, then from there went to an integrative medicine doctor. So that's kind of the next step between Western and then a full functional. I went to an integrative that pulls both Western and Eastern together. Through that, realized that I had what was called hypothalamic amenorrhea, which means an absence of your menstrual cycle, which is mainly due to your brain not sending a signal to your endocrine system that this female is of age to reproduce and needs to have that menstrual cycle, right? It's basically instead telling the endocrine system to like halt because her stress, her cortisol is too high. She's always in, a deprivation of some sort. Like, this isn't the right time to have that menstrual cycle. So that's kind of what I realized from an integrative medicine doctor that I was dealing with. And so from there, seeking therapy. And at the same time, like I said, I was really interested in this functional side of things. So through that, I just myself started learning more and more about it. And I started picking up books about Ayurveda, which I had been exposed to as a kid. So my background, culturally, my parents were born in India. I was born in the United States. I still have family over there. So every time I would go back to India as a kid, we'd, go and get massages and all these things that I had no idea was tied to actual like Eastern medicine. But later, as I started digging more into it, I understood the purpose of everything that we did, from the ingredients that we consumed, like turmeric and ginger and coconut, to just mindfulness practices, the yoga, the meditation, breath work I was doing even as a kid. So I kind of started pulling all that together and really then sought out functional medicine as a way to heal holistically. So I saw a functional practitioner to help, with my diet, to bring back those healthy fats that your endocrine system needs. At the same time, I went through acupuncture, which I really think helped support my hormones and bringing that menstrual cycle back. And then lifestyle changes. So really, when you think about a holistic and functional approach, to healing, it's your nutrition and it's your, your lifestyle. You can't do one and not the other. It really goes hand in hand to support, your cortisol and your stress and everything.
Great. Well, I'm so glad that you helped find a remedy and you're able to remedy the situation. So I know you talked a little bit about, a few minutes ago, a little bit about how you got started with Cookie Company. You were just like, why not go all in? But talk a little bit more about how you got into it, some of the challenges you faced starting a cookie company and all that.
Yeah. So it's funny because a lot of times when companies launch, there's usually a backstory to it. Obviously sometimes people are like, this is a good idea. Let's just launch it. For me, through that process of healing, I also had to heal my relationship with food. Right. So, coming from having an eating disorder, I feared so many different foods, one of that being desserts and cookies and treats. Right. So I would either not consume them at all, or I would be very, very particular, or, whatever it was. I needed to build a better relationship with that because I have a sweet tooth and, you have to be able to consume those things, especially once in a while. But at the same time, I needed to support building back my hormones, my mental health, and my gut health, because that was another thing that triggered me that something was wrong. I just started getting really, really bad gut issues. Again, everything works hand in hand. So it's just having, a lack of nutrients. But so through that, I was like, okay, I need to have a better relationship with cookies. I also need to be careful of the ingredients that I'm using to not disrupt my gut. So I started to create things myself. So I started to, go into the kitchen, get creative, combine things like almond flour, almond butter, maple, things that have nutritional purpose to them. And at the same time, including those adaptogens like ashwagandha, maca that I was, using myself for hormones and adrenal health and whatever it was. So that's how I kind of started to build them myself. So again, just like for my own use case. And then through the years, sharing them with people through my own Instagram channel. And people are like, oh, this is so cool. I don't know what these ingredients are, though. I'd love to know more and how I can, fuse them into, my cookies too. And that's kind of when the wheel started turning. And I was like, there is a need. And, looking at data, like ashwagandha sales, people are really starting to turn more and more to these ingredients. So how can we bridge that Eastern nutrition into a modern application? And that's where YouAgain really started to come from. So by building those mixes and seeing that people really could like customize it, that's what we decided to come to market with and launch last year. But that's just a backstory of it. I know you didn't specifically ask me for that, but it's like, how do you go from that to just a cookie? So there was a little bit of a few years in the making, really. But I guess, to answer your question more directly, there has, of course, been challenges. We are primarily direct to consumer right now. We are expanding into retail, but because of that, it was, I don't want to say easy, because by no means is it easy to launch a business direct to consumer, because it's harder to acquire your customers and reach people. But it was just a matter of, sharing throughout social and creating a website and getting it out there and really starting to get feedback from it. But it is difficult a lot of brands are popping up. I'm sure, you see there's just so many brands continue to pop up. And I would say within the last 2 years, every single day, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's something new.
I'm like, this looks yummy. This looks good.
Yeah. And it's great. It's so good because it just like, companies are finally focusing on the nutrition aspect of food. But of course it's a challenge, right? Because there's only so many people you can reach. So I think that's always been, how do we continue to provide the value and show who we are and, what we're about and why we're different. And that's really what we have been focusing on the first year of being out there and being in the space. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult to get into the food and drink industry. It's constantly getting new competitors, or just the same competitors who are already there, obviously have a big market share. So it's definitely super hard to get into the food industry. But like we've discussed, you have a great brand, you have, great cookies that are healthy and yummy and just inspiring to people. And like you said, people were looking like, they were home. They're looking for things to do, to bake, to eat, and you couldn't go out. So it was perfect opportunity.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think like it's interesting because we get asked, okay, well, as things start opening up, do you feel people will, stop baking as much? And it's kind of funny because, statistics are showing that people are not. They're still, I mean, I know you're on social media too, like the food and recipe, if you go through Pinterest, like people are loving, how you can bake cleaner. And whether that's for your children or your family or for your weekend or whatever it is, it's still there. And I think it's only going to continue to grow. And it's brands like us and other ones that can support that.
I agree. So how did you come up with the name, by the way?
Yeah. So actually it's funny. We did have a different name in the beginning, and I don't know if you remember that
I do
either, but
remember.
yeah. We when we had that, we were really just trying to like, let's get something out there and go. And then as you build a company, you have to realize like, okay, there's something called trademark and copyright. So we had
Right.
to change our name. But the whole idea behind YouAgain is really to think about that we want this brand to be about you. We want it to be about the consumer. Ayurveda is all about the fact that you, me, everybody is different. We are our own unique individual. And so like whatever we're consuming, however we're moving our body should be best for us. So we really wanted a brand that focuses on you, the consumer. And at the same time, like bringing you back to your best self, something that's rooted in ancient principles, and something that it is also like playful, So if you think like in the colloquial phrase, like you again, it's like, hey, it's great to see you again. And so I think that that's kind of also just like an easy and approachable way to kind of get our name out there. So
Right.
there's depth to it, but there's also just, it's kind of
Right.
just fun and easy.
That makes sense. And what's your favorite kind of cookie, by the way? Considering you make cookies.
Yeah, definitely chocolate chip. So I
Me
love a
too.
good chocolate chip. And I think it's simple, but it can be super delicious and just like satisfying. I'm a huge chocolate fan. Like chocolate is my love language basically. So to have anything with chocolate, I love it. But
Yeah. Chocolate chips
yeah,
definitely my favorite too.
yeah,
Yeah, it's just a classic. Everybody likes chocolate chip. Although some
yeah,
people like oatmeal ginger, a lot of people like oatmeal raisin, oatmeal ginger, those kind of cookies.
yeah. Which is exactly why we had that one in there, and also because some people, our other two mixes do use almonds and are nut based, and a lot, people are sensitive to nuts, and so the other option is like a good sprouted oat, which is great for digestion. I actually know like a number of people that do not like chocolate or like are allergic to chocolate. Like I can't relate to that, but so that's why I was like, okay, we need to have something that doesn't have chocolate in it too.
Should we be looking out for any new cookies coming soon? Any new recipes?
Yeah, we're definitely working on new mixes. We did just last month relaunch our mint chocolate and our oat ginger. So before they were all three just cookie mixes. We tweaked the recipes just slightly, and our mint chocolate is now a cookie and brownie mix, and our oat ginger is a cookie and muffin mix. And both the brownies and the muffins are super delicious. I have already we literally meal prep the muffins every single week. And they, again, just like our cookie mixes, it uses some super simple ingredients like banana and coconut oil and water. So it's really basic, but easy to prep. And so by kind of expanding now a little bit more in that baking category, we're really testing out like how breakfast food works. But we do have a couple coming through for the holidays. We're also working on a ready to eat. So over the summer, we launched a ready to eat cookie dough, which was just fun and playful, and to see like how people liked
Right.
something, that they could just spoon out of the jar. And consumers loved it. So we're hoping to bring it back. We just have to figure out how we can scale that, and really meet the demand of it. So a lot of things still we're trying to figure out. It is a small team, and when I say small, it's myself. And my husband who supports. So, kind of just learning all of the things on the production supply chain side of how to bring new products to market in the most efficient and effective way.
Great. I'm excited to see what's coming next. And my
Yeah.
last question for you is, so where do you see this scaling in the next 5 years? What is your goal for the company? Where you want to go? Like more retail? Do you want to
Yeah.
be maybe some kind of subscription? What do you want to like go for?
Yeah. So really like our goal is to be a leader in modernizing, ancient nutrition for the Western world. And so by saying that, I mean expanding even outside of baking. So while we started with baking, just based on my own journey, as I mentioned, and again, seeing the opportunity there, we really want to bring these Ayurvedic principles into other facets of people's daily life and lifestyle. So what that looks like, we'll be behind the curtains until we can share more, but that's really what, we're going to be focusing on as it relates to innovation and new product development over the next 5 years. From a sales channel perspective, I love direct to consumer. I love being able to like meet the customer and like have that connection with them, and know who is purchasing us and what they like and who else they like. You just get a lot more data from that. At the same time, especially because we're in baking, most people pick up their baking mixes when they're in the grocery store. So
Right.
Retail is definitely a big push for us right now through the rest of this quarter and going into next year. So we're really going to be putting our initiatives towards both. So maintaining our direct to consumer channel, building out our subscription business. So you mentioned subscription. We do have that currently, and we hope to continue to build that. At the same time, being in strategic retail partners. So starting with Southern California, Texas, places that we are already seeing our customers living, and supporting them in store there, just because you can reach a lot more people when you're on shelves. And
Right.
we built a pretty little brand that we want people to see like
Show
on
off the
shelves.
packaging
Right?
to everybody.
Oh yeah. So this is our oat ginger cookie and muffin mix, like I said. So yeah, I only have this one around here, but yeah, it's great to see it on shelf. So that's definitely a push for us over the next 5 years, just really continuing to build our retail and our online presence.
Well, I am very excited to see where the company goes from here. I will continue to support. And thank you so much for joining me. And the link will be down below to her website if you guys want to check out her cookies, buy them, try them. So thank you so much again for joining me. And I'll see everybody next time on The Groundwork.
Thanks so much for having me, Ashley. It was great chatting.